What's going on, guys? It's Bromley. I'm back. I want to get into the Olympics a little bit. I haven't been really covering them or watching them closely, but there's a couple big stories that caught my interest, so I want to give my 2 cents on it. I'm going to start with the big one. I'm a little late to the game, but hopefully it's still fresh enough in your minds that it's relevant. I want to talk about the Simone Biles story. Only reason I want to talk about it is because as part of this channel, I really like conversations that have to do with sportsmanship, with standards, with our philosophy regarding how we see ourselves and hold ourselves to high standards, what we expect out of other people. And this is a very interesting story for me, so I do want to cover that a little bit. For those of you that don't know, well, I'm sure everybody knows at this point, she was slated last week to compete in the team event, and she pulled out because she wasn't feeling it. People threw around terms like, mental health, or the rumors that ADHD medication that wasn't allowed in Japan played a role. That's since been dispelled. Long story short, she was making mistakes that her coaches said they literally had never seen her make. She was getting dizzy or vertigo. She was losing her bearings in the air. They call it the twisties. And in a sport such as gymnastics, which is extremely violent and explosive and has to be super precise, generally in sport, those two things have an inverse relationship. That's sports psychology 101. The more violent you are, the less precise you are, and vice versa. So you have to be on point. And to do these aerials and lose your bearings, well, that's a risk. Not only are you going to screw up, but you're going to very likely injure yourself. So she pulled out. Not only do I think was that the right thing to do, honestly, I think it was the only thing she could have done. So I want to talk about this story because I found the whole thing super fucking obnoxious from all ends, because it just goes to show that given the state of our media, given the state of our consumerist culture, given the state of the toxic cancer called social media that we need to find a way to eliminate if we want to make it into the next millennia in one piece, given all of these things that feed us information and play on our emotions and pull us back and forth, we now have this compulsion as a society to take the most mundane things, as long as they're high profile, the most mundane things, and twist and stretch and push them through the filter of whatever our ideological leaning is to try to reinforce the things we already believe. And it's really gross. So I think I'm going to break down a little bit kind of what the disagreement is on either side. But I'm going to start by saying I think everybody's being a fucking idiot. And I'll get into that. So let's start with the more right-leaning crew. And I'm going to talk about politics because this was politicized. I could tell, or you can guess pretty accurately, I think, where somebody lines up on this issue based on their YouTube search history, who they voted for, whatever. So more on the conservative side, you're going to see people who are generally worried about lack of standards or standard softening in society, lack of accountability, people expecting similar accolades for doing less, and on and on. And then that brings this whole philosophical question: how does that affect how people see themselves, and how does that affect how people hold the society around them accountable? I am a little empathetic towards that leaning, and I've talked about things like standards and the importance of holding them very high, and I've talked about expectations. So I'm going to cut this group a little bit of slack for a couple reasons, not entirely, but one is that I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that most people did what I did, saw a headline, and then jumped right into a conclusion. Now, if you did that, you're an idiot. Like, you do the smart thing, you read 3 more lines and figure out that, oh, this was a real problem she was experiencing. She choked. It is what it is. Athletes are human. The best in the world still have times where they're off their game and then they come back. It is what it is. Like I said, it's very mundane in the world of sports. Not everything is going to be a miracle on ice. I think a lot of people went into this half-cocked, and that's a mistake. The other reason I'm going to give a little bit of a pass is because this is sports in general. This would also be mundane, the type of critiques she was getting, if it was any other sport, specifically if it were male sports. Males are subject to this regularly, and I'm only pointing out the double standard because I think it ties into how both sides are treating this, and I think I hate to use the term problematic, but I think it's problematic from both sides. I think the people on the right, or the people that are inclined to say it was a disgrace and so on, they're the people that are used to sitting on their couch with crumbs on their shirt, yelling at the TV because the coach, who gets paid millions of dollars to run the best athletes in the world against dozens of other teams of the best athletes in the world, somehow they know better than them, right? And it's the same byproduct of this consumerist culture. Sports fans are the worst. One of the problems I have with powerlifting and strongman, people want to grow the sport. And I'm like, if the sport gets bigger, if the sport gets real, you get real fans. You don't want real fans. They're awful. The entire sport isn't built off people enjoying themselves. It's built off people talking to each other as if they know what they're talking about. It's insufferable. And it hits home if you're actually an authority in that field. So sports is super toxic, and it's something everybody expects. They're insulated to. If Tom Brady threw an interception to lose the Super Bowl, the guy would be getting dead cats left on his car. Like, the amount of vitriol and insults and just venom that gets spewed at athletes is just par for the course. And I think what Simone Biles got hit with, I think it's tame. Comparatively, it's pretty tame. Now, I get the Olympics is different. It appeals to a different audience. It's about feel good stories and all that. So it doesn't take the same. It doesn't have the same exaggerated mania that regular sports fans bring to the table. But still, it's very uncontroversial to bring this type of critique to most athletes, even if it's unfounded. And I do think it's unfounded. Now, going into the other side, and this is the side that I do take a bigger problem with, because I think they're screwing up on multiple levels. But these are the people on the left. These are the people that are the creative types, the ones that are really big on inclusivity and positivity. There's this weird unholy alliance of the consumerist base that loves and feeds off of human interest stories. They're the ones that'll watch all the human interest stories on, like, the Titan games or whatever game show they have, where they're showing what battle somebody overcame. These are the people that expect to get that little crack rock worth of feel goodness whenever they see the behind the scenes of some athlete, or whenever they see somebody overcome. And there's this, like, unholy alliance with them, and then these, like, elements of social justice and positivity and inclusivity. And it's kind of weird, because these people watch the Olympics and they demand the feel good story. They want the miracle on ice. They want the overcoming of obstacles. And if they don't get it, they'll just deconstruct the definitions and find a way to make it fit that mold. It's super easy to do. If you've ever watched, like, NBC reality shows, the people that run these shows are masterful. They can take any mundane thing that's ever happened in your life and they can make it seem like the biggest drama story ever. And they tug on your heartstrings and they get you invested. And then you watch the person, I don't know, play ping pong against a grizzly bear or something, whatever the hell they have lined up. It reminds me of Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec when he was trying to help April Ludgate with her art project. They were trying to capture the essence of sadness. And he's like, it's art. Everything is everything. Capture the essence of bravery. Brave floor. Brave wall. Brave computer. That's what I think of when these people go around calling everybody a hero, calling everybody brave. It's this, like, watering down of terms just so you can play the positivity bit, because the whole bit about positivity is that criticism is just never allowed. Well, that's antithetical to what sports is. So that can become kind of a problem. The thing is, Simone pulled out because she had to. She experienced unfortunate circumstances. Going forward was not really an option, so she sat out. It wasn't brave, it wasn't heroic, it just was. Like, if you can't make it to work because you got in a car accident and you don't have a ride, you're not brave for not going to work. Those were just the circumstances. So there's this manic type of hyperbole out there where everybody is super eager to just praise all of these athletes about how good they are, how wonderful they are, how amazing they are. And there's a point where it just turns into bootlicking. Now, I say that to say this. I really do feel, and this is something I feel strongly about, because coaching female athletes is something I do for a living. I've coached a lot of them. I take pride in it. I've loved watching strength sports grow from that end. And now it's standard. It's par for the course. It's changing people's ideas of what strong women should be and what they should look like and how they compete and on and on. All of that's very near and dear to my heart. So as women come out into the fold and they take on these new roles, I have a serious problem when this type of infantilization occurs. So there's this weird thing where it starts with, like, idolatry. And it's like this person represents everything you want them to be, and you want them pure and pristine and protected from harm or criticism. And then it, like, kind of morphs into, like, infantilization, and it gets really fucking weird. Here's the thing about Simone Biles. She's a fucking boss. By the time she was a teenager, she was the greatest to ever do it. She could never win another gold medal. And because she could do things no other woman could do, like, in the history of the world, she already had her legacy sealed. Simone Biles does not need the entire world's love, validation, and reaffirmation. And there's a point where I find it I almost see it as like the point of chivalry that feminists used to find or still find really off-putting and problematic, where it's like the idea that we're here to protect you kind of reinforces that you're less than or weaker than, which kind of reinforces this hierarchy they were trying to tear down. And when I see something like this, I get that. I mean, I was listening to Bill Maher talk about it, and I like Bill Maher on some things. I don't like him on others. But the way he was talking about what you go through as a competitive gymnast, as if Bill Maher knows what competitive sports is like. He was talking about the stressors of becoming an elite athlete, and he kept saying this poor girl went through X, Y, and Z. And it was so absolutely patronizing and infantilizing. You would never talk about a male athlete in a similar situation and say this poor boy went through all this stuff. He had to show up and perform, and the stress really got to him. You would never say that. So there's this default knee-jerk reaction to try and protect her that I really take issue with, and I think it's damaging. The thing is, if you're gonna be the boss, if you're gonna be the CEO, if you're gonna be the general, you are the one that displayed excellence, that earned your spot, and you are to be treated as an authority, as a master of your arena. That means you're also going to be the person that people look to when things don't quite go right. That means you might get criticism. People might not like what you do. The power and the responsibility go hand in hand, right? The wise man once said, great power comes great responsibility. So anytime people try to save their icons from any type of criticism or negative talk, every time somebody speaks about them in that tone, where if you're not being overwhelmingly positive for the sake of it, it must be because there's some twinge of bias or bigotry or whatever. And I think it's a massive detriment to the people that have worked their ass off for those positions of power, authority, and influence. So I don't know, maybe we can have a talk about whether toxic male fandom should carry over to female sports. That'll be interesting to see in like 50 years how that pans out. If there's like generally accepted social differences between male sports and female sports. So I have this fantasy where some women's team sport gets as big as, like, I don't know, the NFL is or something. And when somebody's favorite team loses because somebody choked, that person, that woman is walking down the street and a group of female fans are walking by and they're like, hey, La Spisa, you fucking suck. And then she turns around and says, your mom fucking sucks. And then they just go about their business. Like, that to me is the step forward that I would like to see. What I don't want to see is that if that scenario were to happen, one or both parties break down in tears and get together and talk about their mental health. Personally, that's not what I want to see. Now, the mental health aspect, that's another one, and I'm sensitive to that because it is a very big deal in this country, but it's been watered down because of our basic bitch definition of what mental health is now. You have women in the first world wearing shirts in glitter that says healing on it. You have people talking about being stressed out at work, the stress of literally day-to-day life affecting their mental health, which you can disagree with me on a lot of points. Objectively, there are more resources to every participant in society than there ever has been in the history of mankind, which means every generation you look back from now until the inception of humanity, whatever people did back then, they did with less than what we have. So I really take exception to this moving of the goalposts so that less and less and less of a stress is required to trigger somebody's mental health. I am very sensitive. I've had mental health issues in my family. It overlaps a lot with things like addiction. I personally think that if you yourself have not gone through treatment or have not been in a 12-step program, you shouldn't really be allowed to talk about it because there is so much nuance to it and there are so many very real dynamics that are hugely important that go way over everybody's head. Personally, I think 12-step programs should be default in like 7th grade. I think you would end a lot of societal problems if people didn't have to, flip their car while drunk to end up in a 12-step program, or didn't have to accidentally run over their grandma. It would just be a huge asset. So anyways, that's something I'm sensitive to. When people talk about mental health, unless you're talking about severe depression, a diagnosed anxiety disorder, some personality disorder, schizophrenia, etc., something that you're in treatment for, you have to be medicated for, if that's not what you're talking about, I don't give a fuck. That's not mental health. That's you dealing with the stress of existing on this planet as a human being. That's a very different thing. And I understand Simone Biles probably wasn't talking about that. She was probably speaking obtusely, just like, I need to get my head right and figure my shit out, which is perfectly fine and valid. And like I said, it's mundane. So the big takeaway, stop taking anything that's high profile and trying to get it to fit your narrative. The Simone Biles story was a non-story, and it only got heightened because of the state of the media right now, the state of social media, and how everybody has their head up their ass. They're too busy smelling their own farts to ask, is this really worth my time to have an opinion on? For the record, I am a big Simone Biles fan, and if she does stick around in gymnastics, which maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, next time around she will probably destroy the Olympics, and then 2021 will be the dramatic lull in her career that sets off her big comeback when they make the Simone Biles story 10 years from now. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm sure there's things that I've missed or meant to get to or didn't. This already went way longer than I wanted it to. Go ahead and leave your comments in the comment box. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.